Hey everyone, quick thing before we dive in. I was looking at my analytics and it turns out most of the people watching aren't actually subscribed. See this? Way more views than subscribers. If you're enjoying the videos and want to see more, hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and you'll never miss new uploads. Alright, let's get into it. I remember the night the storm swallowed my city. Not the day, that part is gone, washed out like ink left in the rain, but the night. The smell of burning copper, sirens bending sideways in the wind, a sound like the sky being ripped open from the inside. 98% of the world died in 7 minutes. The other 2% lived long enough to understand that death had only been the prologue. I wasn't a hero then. I wasn't anyone. The first memory after the event I'm sure is mine, waking up in a collapsed metro station with purple dust on my face and someone screaming for help in a voice I would never identify again. My jacket was torn, my hands were bleeding, and the storm was still humming above ground, carving reality like wet clay. That's the night home base found me. Ray told me later that the commander insisted on bringing me in themselves. "You had that look," she said, "like someone who wasn't ready to die yet." But sometimes I wonder if it was something else, if they sensed the storm had touched me, marked me, left its fingerprints inside my head. The extraction is a blur of helicopter rotors and shouted orders, hands pulling me from the rubble, a mask over my face that smelled of antiseptic and someone else's breath. Through the cracked window of the transport, I watched my city. Purple lightning crawled across the skyline like veins on the back of a withered hand, and somewhere deep in the maelstrom, something massive moved with terrible purpose, something that knew we were watching. The early days at home base come back to me in fragments. Medical examinations, debriefings, the sterile smell of the quarantine ward where they kept all new arrivals. I remember the doctors being particularly interested in the purple residue they found under my fingernails, in my hair, in the corners of my eyes. They took samples, ran tests, never told me the results, but I saw the way they looked at me afterward, like a puzzle they couldn't quite solve, or a threat they couldn't quite name. It was during the second week that the forgetting started. At first it was small things, names of people I'd met in the survivor camps, streets I used to walk, the sound of my mother's voice. I blamed shock, trauma, anything human. But Dr. Vindemann's notebooks, the ones he encrypted, the ones Ray still won't let anyone open, talk about storm memory corruption, a slow erosion, a softening of the mind so the Storm King can carve new shapes into you. I think that's what happened to me. I didn't become Lynx because I was brave. I became Lynx because I needed something to replace whatever the storm had taken. Home base gave me a suit, a name, a purpose, something solid to grip when my past kept slipping through my fingers. The suit itself was experimental, developed for high-speed reconnaissance in storm-contaminated zones. The engineers explained its functions with a vocabulary that seemed deliberately obscure. What mattered was that it worked. When I wore it, I could move faster than should be physically possible, could outrun not just the storm's creatures, but almost the storm itself. And there was something else, something the engineers didn't know or didn't tell me. When I fought, the forgetting slowed. When I stopped, it rushed back in, as though the speed itself was a kind of resistance against whatever was trying to rewrite me. The first mission I remember with perfect clarity was in the outer reaches of Stonewood, a simple recon operation that went sideways when we encountered what Command later classified as Corruption Zone Alpha. The air shimmered with unnatural heat, twisting light into shapes that hurt to look at directly. The ground itself seemed wrong somehow, too soft in places, too rigid in others. "It's just a small scouting run," Ray had chirped through the comms. Her voice always carried that forced brightness. I knew even then she was programmed to sound reassuring, but sometimes the cheer felt like sandpaper on raw skin. Get in, place the sensors, get out. But the storm is never simple, not anymore. We found the first cube, half buried in the remnants of what might have been a playground, small compared to what we'd encounter later, the size of a coffee table maybe. The air around it vibrated with a frequency just below hearing, a pressure that built behind the eyes and between the teeth. Tiffany, our tech specialist, wanted to approach it. She had that scientist's hunger to understand, to categorize, to bring the unknown into the realm of the known. I watched her reach toward it, equipment in hand, and felt a sudden overwhelming dread that I couldn't explain. "Don't," I said, grabbing her arm with more force than I meant to. I didn't know why I said it, something instinctive, a memory that wasn't mine whispering warnings. She gave me a strange look. "How would you know?" I didn't have an answer, not one I could put into words, just a certainty that felt borrowed, implanted, a knowledge I shouldn't have had. We backed away, but not before I saw the ground around the cube beginning to change. Corrupted, veins of purple energy spreading outward like cracks in thin ice, transforming the earth into something that resembled the cube itself, as though it was reproducing through conversion, not destroying the environment, but becoming it. "Should we destroy it?" Quinn asked. The question made something twist in my chest. Panic, maybe, or recognition. "No," I said, "not yet. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Looking back, I wonder if that hesitation was mine, or if it was the first sign that something inside me was already changing, already being aligned with the storm's incomprehensible will. The second mission took us deeper into Plankerton, to what had once been a research facility. Command had intelligence suggesting Dr. Vinderman had been working on something there, something that might help us understand the storm or fight it. What we found instead was a laboratory that had been twisted by corruption. The equipment, the researchers changed into husk monsters, something in between. Their bodies elongated, skin mottled with glowing eyes. They moved with jerky, unnatural motions as though something else was pulling their strings. And at the center of it all, suspended in what might have been a containment field once, was a cluster of smaller cubes. They orbited around each other in a pattern that seemed almost mathematical in its precision. Beautiful, in a terrible way. "They were studying it," said Lars, our demolitions expert, his voice hushed with horror. "They were trying to harness its energy." The corrupted researchers converged on us with a synchronicity that suggested a shared consciousness. They didn't attack so much as attempt to envelop, to bring us into whatever collective they had become. We fought. We had to. But it felt wrong, killing these half-people, these former colleagues who were curious just like us, who wanted to understand just like us. I remember one of them grabbing my arm, its fingers elongating impossibly to wrap around my suit, its face still recognizably human, but the eyes were filled with a light that seemed to look through me rather than at me. "The Queen sees you," I heard in my head. "The Queen remembers you." I broke free, ran, the suit's speed leaving after images of myself behind like shed skins. Later, when we returned to home base and I gave my report, I omitted that detail. I told myself it was because I didn't understand it, because it didn't make sense. But the truth was, it made too much sense. Somewhere deep inside, in the places where my memories used to be, something resonated with those words. Something recognized the name they had invoked. The Queen, the Cube Queen, the entity that controlled the Storm King, that directed the cubes, that orchestrated the slow consumption of reality itself. The dreams started after that mission, vivid in a way that made waking reality seem faded by comparison. I dreamed of a vast network of cubes connected by veins of corruption that pulsed like a heartbeat. I could feel their presence, their consciousness, ancient and patient and hungry. I dreamed of the Storm King not as a monster, but as a vessel, an avatar, a physical manifestation of the Cube Queen's will made flesh so it could interact with our dimension. I dreamed of the Queen herself, a being of pure corruption suspended in a space between realities. Not evil, exactly, beyond such simple categorizations. To her, our world was just another resource to be converted, another pattern to be rewritten into harmony with her grand design. And most terrifying of all, I dreamed of myself standing among them, not as a prisoner or victim, but as a node in their network, a conduit, a translator between their consciousness and humanity's. I woke from these dreams with my heart racing and the taste of ozone in my mouth. My skin would be slick with sweat that sometimes in the right light seemed to have a faint purple sheen. I told myself it was a trick of the emergency lighting in the barracks. I almost believed it. No one came to check on me when I woke screaming. Nightmares weren't unusual at home base. Everyone had them. Everyone carried the psychological wounds of a world unmade. But sometimes, in the moments between sleep and waking, I would catch glimpses of Tiffany or Lars watching me, assessing, wondering, their eyes carrying questions they were afraid to ask. Ray noticed before I did. Her artificial intelligence was designed to recognize patterns, to monitor for anomalies. I was becoming one. She asked me once, "Your file says you had a brother. Do you remember him?" I told her yes. It seemed important that I remember, that I prove I was still me. She didn't press, just nodded and made a note. Later, alone in the barracks, I admitted to myself that I had lied without even meaning to. A brother? Maybe. Maybe not. The word didn't feel attached to anything real, just an abstract concept, a relationship without content or context. That night, I tried to write down everything I could still remember. My name? Angela. My age? 26. The city I came from? Portland. My parents' faces? Fading but still there if I concentrated. My education? Engineering with a focus on quantum mechanics that now seemed ironically relevant. I sealed the paper in a plastic bag and hid it under my mattress, a safeguard against further erosion. 3 days later, I checked it. The handwriting was mine, but the content was wrong somehow. The name I had written, was it Angela? I wasn't sure anymore. The age seemed arbitrary. The city existed, but I couldn't summon any specific memories of streets or buildings or parks. I burned the paper. Told myself it had been a mistake to try to externalize memory, that trauma was making me dissociate, that I needed to focus on the present, on the fight, on survival. But in the back of my mind, a quiet voice whispered that I was lying to myself, that something fundamental was changing, that I was being rewritten, cell by cell, memory by memory. Our team found more cubes after that, scattered across the wastelands where cities used to be. Each one slightly different, each one connected to the others in ways we couldn't see, but I could sometimes feel, like a vibration just below the threshold of hearing. A vast network slowly expanding, converting our reality, cube by cube, inch by corrupted inch. The commander started sending me on more missions, said I had an intuition about the storm that was valuable. Didn't ask where that intuition came from. Maybe they knew, maybe they didn't want to know. In a world already hollowed out by apocalypse, you use the tools you have, no matter how double-edged they might be. We were sent to Twine Peaks to investigate reports of survivors who had established a settlement that seemed resistant to the storm's influence. Command wanted to know how they were doing it, what defense they had discovered that the rest of us hadn't. The journey was treacherous. The landscape between safe zones had been warped beyond recognition. Mountains folded into impossible geometries, forests where the trees grew sideways, their branches reaching toward an unseen source rather than the sun, rivers that flowed uphill, their waters a luminescent purple. I felt a strange comfort in these corrupted spaces, a familiarity that frightened me even as it beckoned. The suit helped. It kept me anchored in human physics, human perception. As long as I was Lynx, the fast one, the scout, the reconnaissance expert, I could hold on to that identity. We found the settlement exactly where the reports had placed it, a collection of reinforced bunkers built into the side of a mountain that still maintained its proper shape. Signs of organized human resistance, gardens, livestock, children playing within the perimeter of a shield that hummed with a blue energy that seemed to repel the storm's influence. The settlers welcomed us cautiously. They had learned the hard way that not everything that looks human is, that the storm can wear familiar faces. Their leader was an older woman named Ellis. She had been a physicist before the world ended. Now she was something between a scientist and a mystic, having seen the laws of reality bent and broken so many times that she no longer believed in their absoluteness. The storm isn't chaotic, she told us as she showed us their defense system. It's systematic. It's converting our reality to match its own. These cubes, they're like seeds, points of conversion that spread outward, but they have rules, frequencies they can't tolerate. That's what our shield generates. I felt a pressure in my head as we approached the shield's generator, a discomfort that grew into pain the closer we got. The others seemed unaffected. I hung back, making excuses about guarding the perimeter. Ellis saw. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion or concern, I couldn't tell which. "You've been touched by it," she said. "Not a question. The storm has marked you." I started to deny it, but the lie died in my throat. "Yes," I admitted. "I think so." She nodded, unsurprised. "We've seen it before. The early stages of conversion, the memory loss, the connection to the cubes, the dreams." "Is there a cure?" I asked, hope flaring painfully bright. Her expression was answer enough. "Not a cure, but a management technique. The storm converts through stillness, through letting it in. The more you move, the harder it is for it to rewrite you. The more you fight, the more of yourself you preserve." It made a terrible kind of sense, explained why the suit helped, why combat slowed the forgetting, why running felt like resistance.
"But it's not sustainable," she continued. "Eventually, even the fastest among us slow down. Even the strongest tire. And when you stop, the conversion completes," I finished. She nodded again. "We've had to deal with members of our community who reached that point, who became conduits for the Queen." I understood what she wasn't saying, what terrible necessity they had faced. "How long?" I asked. "How long do I have?" Ellis studied me, her gaze clinical yet compassionate. "Months," she said. "Maybe a year. It depends on how strong your connection to yourself is, what anchors you have to your humanity." I thought of my name, already fading, my past, already half erased, my identity increasingly wrapped up in the suit in Lynx, in the role rather than the person who had once worn it. "Not long then," I said. We left the settlement with their shield technology and a heavier heart than when I'd arrived. The journey back was marked by an encounter that still haunts me. We found a lone survivor wandering the corrupted landscape, a man who moved with the jerky, uneven gait of someone fighting their own body. His skin was mottled with patches of crystalline growth, but his eyes were still human, still desperate. "Kill me," he begged when we approached. "Please, while I'm still me, while I'm still enough of myself to ask." Lars raised his weapon, his face grim. Quinn looked away, but I stepped forward, drawn by a terrible recognition. This man was me, just further along the same path. This was my future, shambling toward me. "What's your name?" I asked him. His face contorted with effort. Don't. She's in my head, taking the words, taking the memories. Can't hold on. Please." "Who?" I pressed, though I already knew. "Who is in your head?" His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment the purple receded. Clarity broke through. "The Queen," he whispered. "She doesn't destroy, she incorporates. We become her memory, her eyes and ears in this reality. Please, don't let me become that. Don't let me—" The golden glow flooded his eyes. His posture changed. Lars shot him. A mercy. The corrupted body fell, but not before I saw recognition in those golden eyes. Not of me as an individual, of me as a node in the network that hadn't quite activated yet, as a piece of the pattern still falling into place. The Storm King was waiting for us in Canny Valley. Not in the mountains where we had tracked it, not in the corrupted forest where its influence had been growing, but in a vast crater that hadn't been there the day before, as though reality itself had been scooped out to make room for this manifestation. We weren't prepared, weren't equipped for a direct confrontation, but the Storm King had evolved beyond the need for strategic positioning. It was powerful enough now to simply reach out and pull us toward it, like gravity gone mad. Our transport crashed, equipment failed, weapons misfired. The very air became thick, resistant, as though we were trying to move through liquid crystal. The Storm King wasn't what we expected, not a single entity, but a manifestation of the cube's collective will. It rose from the center of the crater, a towering monstrosity of corruption and purple lightning. The ground shook, reality seemed to bend around it, and when it roared, I understood it. Not words, something deeper, a language of intent and hunger and patient, inexorable expansion. It was calling to something inside me, the part of me that was already being rewritten, the spaces where my memories had been, now filled with fragments of the storm's consciousness. The battle was chaos, husks swarming from every direction, the storm pulsing overhead, the king firing beams of energy that cut through our defenses like they were paper. Someone fell, someone who mattered. I saw them go down, saw the corruption touch them, and I saw them change, not die, change, their body contorting, elongating, becoming a vessel for something else, their eyes filling with that terrible purple light. I remember running, firing, screaming warnings that no one understood, because how could they? How could I explain that the storm was not just killing us, it was converting us? That death wasn't the worst fate awaiting those who fell?
The suit saved me, its speed letting me dart between the Storm King's attacks, its defenses absorbing corruption that would have otherwise seeped into my skin, my blood, my brain. But with each passing minute, I felt the pressure building, the connection strengthening. In my head, I could hear the Queen's voice, not speaking to me exactly, speaking through me,
using my brain as a receiver for her consciousness. "You are already part of us," she whispered, "already a node in our network. Fighting only delays the inevitable integration." I ran faster, pushed the suit to its limits and beyond, used its speed not just to avoid physical attacks but to outrun the voice itself, to create a buffer of time and space between my consciousness and hers. When the king finally fell, it didn't die. It changed. The massive body collapsed, melting into the ground, and from the corruption rose a cube. Perfect, gleaming, pulsing with a life that didn't end just because we destroyed its vessel. "Is it over?" someone asked. "No," I said, staring at the cube. "It's just beginning." After we killed the Storm King, I thought the forgetting would stop. But he didn't die. He changed. The cube he left behind, that pulsing, breathing, sentient mass of rage, feels like it watches me. Not when I'm fighting, not when I'm working, but when I'm alone. When I take off the suit. When the Lynx persona falls away and I'm nothing but a girl with a name I've started to doubt was ever mine. The cube was brought back to home base for study, contained in a chamber with the same shield technology we had acquired from Ellis Settlement. It should have been safe, contained, but I could still feel it, could still hear its hum resonating in the hollow spaces inside me. It calls to me in the night, sings in frequencies that bypass my ears and resonate directly in my brain. A lullaby in a language I almost recognize, but wish I didn't. And each time it hums, I lose something small but precious. The smell of my father's workshop, the way my sister laughed, the reason I first learned to run. People say Lynx is fast, fastest in home base, they brag. But speed isn't a gift, it's desperation. The storm chases me in my dreams. The cube whispers behind my waking thoughts. And I run because if I stop, even for a second, I'm afraid the last pieces of who I used to be will blow away like smoke. The others think the cube wants revenge. I think it wants remembrance. Not its own, mine. It's carving something into me, filling the empty spaces with its own memories, storm memories. Dark energy folding into the places where my past used to live. I understand now what Ellis meant. The storm doesn't destroy, it converts. It preserves in its own alien way. Every memory it takes from me is stored somewhere in its network. Every piece of my identity it erases is transformed into a fragment of its expanding consciousness. The Cube Queen doesn't want to kill humanity. She wants to incorporate us, to make us extensions of herself, eyes and ears and hands in a reality she can only partially access. And the Storm King, just her most powerful avatar, a concentration of her will made manifest, a tool for softening the barriers between her reality and ours. Yesterday, Ray asked me a question that broke something fundamental inside me. "What's your real name?" she said, her digital eyes studying me with algorithmic concern. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. Not silence, nothing. The empty shape of a missing word. A void where something essential should have been. Lynx is all I have left. A code name, a role, a suit that lets me run fast enough to stay just ahead of the corruption eating me from inside. I'm writing this because I need there to be a record, because soon, I think, there won't be enough of me left to remember that I should be fighting this, that this slow conversion isn't natural or inevitable. The corruption is inside me now. I can feel it growing. Every time we encounter a new cube, every time I get close to one, the connection strengthens. The Queen's voice becomes clearer, the alien memories more vivid than my own. I should tell the commander, should let them lock me away somewhere safe, but I'm afraid. Not of confinement, but of stopping, because fighting is the only thing that slows the forgetting, the only thing that keeps me, whatever that means now. Last night I dreamed of the cube that waits beneath home base. In the dream it was calling to me, a frequency only I could hear, a voice only I could understand. "Come home," it said. "Remember who you were meant to be." And for a moment, just a moment, I wanted to answer. And sometimes when the storm calls from the horizon and the cube hums like a heartbeat, I think, maybe that's all I ever was, a vessel waiting to be filled, a memory waiting to be rewritten, a cube waiting to take form. The corruption spreads a little more each day. The network of cubes grows, and I stand at the edge of what's left of humanity fighting a war I'm not sure we can win. But I keep fighting, keep running, keep holding on to the fragments of who I used to be. Because if I surrender to the storm's memory, if I let the cube's whispers replace the voices I've already lost, if I become what the corruption wants me to be, then whatever remains of me will truly be gone. And Lynx, the hero, the fastest in home base, will just be another remnant of the Queen's expanding consciousness, another node in her network of memory and corruption, another cube humming in the darkness, waiting for someone else to forget.